Welcome to the Liberating Joy and Learning podcast. I'm Robert Becksham, and today we're going to start a new season for this podcast. We're going to be discussing how other books or theories about learning and growth help us understand learning liberated principles better. In this first episode, we're going to be discussing Steven Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Restoring the Character Ethic. Now, the character ethic is a paradigm, or as Covey explained it, a theory, an explanation, or a model of something else. Covey further explains that our personal paradigms are the source of our attitudes and behaviors. So, how do paradigms help you with your learning and growth?
This is kind of a hard question, really.
Okay.
But using a paradigm helps you understand where you're coming from in life.
Right.
Right. Whether you're happy with it or not, it helps you understand some of why you're making those choices.
Right.
So, if I make mistakes or my attitudes that I'm not happy with, I can look back at the paradigms and go, okay,
right.
Where am I coming at this
right.
from? And then I can make bigger changes rather than, stop being mean to your
right.
daughter or whatever.
Right.
Right. How about you?
Well, I mean, again, the hard part is understanding what a paradigm is.
Right.
And based on Covey's explanation, it's just a theory or an explanation or a model of something else. So your and he calls it the character ethic, or your in our words, our learning goals. Those are our paradigms.
Right.
And how we have, if we understand that definition, we can look back on the progress we've made or the progress we haven't made on some of the goals that we've set for us in the past, and like you said, see where we can improve, or how we have gotten to where we're at now.
Right. Okay, Covey's book is one of the first self-help books I ever remember reading, and it's certainly the first one outside of scriptures that I've referred back to again and again for guidance in personal growth. I think it's interesting that my copy of this book that was printed in 1990 doesn't include Restoring the Character Ethic on the cover, that's part of the official title, right?
Right.
So instead, along with the main title, it has Powerful Lessons in Personal Change. So Covey's 7 habits can be seen as a paradigm from which we can view how to be highly effective and how to make personal change happen. So let's look at how some of Covey's principles help us understand learning liberated principles and consequently help us learn better.
Okay. In part 2 of Covey's book, we learn about habit 1, be proactive. Now, toward the end of that chapter is a section entitled Making and Keeping Commitments, which is very helpful to improve our understanding of the second primary lens, claiming our learning. As we explained in the podcast about claiming our learning, life is often messy and hard with lots of competing demands. Also, failure makes us cautious about making goals and deciding to learn something. Don't let past failures or inadequacies or life's craziness prevent you from claiming your learning. Acting intentionally to claim our desires, even in the face of life's many demands on our attention, puts us on the path to understanding and direction in order to eventually fulfill a multitude of growing desires. Covey helps us do this when he says, as we make and keep commitments, even small commitments, we begin to establish an inner integrity that gives us the awareness of self-control and the courage and strength to accept more of the responsibility for our own lives. By making and keeping promises to ourselves and others, little by little, our honor becomes greater than our moods. So the question then is, what does this teach us about making commitments and claiming learning?
I love Covey's description of the power of making commitments. And one of the reasons I love learning liberated principles is because they're not new. Right? They're things that we already kind of sense.
Right.
And we just kind of focus on these simple principles, and when we do, we understand them so much better. Right. So I love the concepts he brings out, like inner integrity, awareness of self-control, courage, strength. Our honor becomes greater than our moods.
Right.
There is such power in making a commitment to yourself.
Right.
And, yes, it needs to be written down, but not necessarily.
Right.
If it's just like, okay, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to drive there, the traffic's going to be bad, I'm not going to be ornery while I'm driving. It can be as simple as that, and there is power in making that commitment to yourself.
And I think that's in my mind, that's one of the more powerful parts of his statement is even small commitments.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a big goal about solving world hunger or whatever it happens to be. It could be just as simple as I'm going to get up on time tomorrow. I'm not going to hit the snooze button.
Right.
You know,
and then little by little, those
Right.
commitments make us stronger and better capable of making those more
The
commitments.
idea of being 1% better each day.
Yes. Yes. Cool. How about you? Anything?
No,
Or is
that's
that kind of your
that's
answer?
what I
Okay.
said. Right before that, in the section entitled "The Other End of the Stick," Covey teaches us about how to deal with mistakes that we make. Learning Liberated teaches us how to own our failures and successes in the third primary lens. Owning both failures and successes helps you strengthen your honesty and courage in working toward your learning claims. Clarity requires honesty, and facing weakness and strengths like a soldier headed to battle requires courage. With this courage, we increase our ability to face our weaknesses and our strengths and utilize them both to achieve the learning we seek. About failures or mistakes, Covey says, the proactive approach to a mistake is to acknowledge it instantly, correct, and learn from it. This literally turns a failure into a success. Success, said IBM founder T.J. Watson, is on the far side of failure. So the question is, what does this teach us about owning our failures and successes?
Okay, so I went through Covey's book and I just kind of found the things that I loved the most.
Right.
And this one stood out to me. And I really love success is on the far side of failure.
Right.
Right. There you do get there, and failures take you to success.
Right.
However, I struggle a little bit when he says, sure, yes, we want to acknowledge it instantly.
Right.
But then correct it right away. I'm torn.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about owning your failures and successes, that's not the place to correct them. We own it.
Right.
And to some extent, we're correcting it by just owning it.
Right.
But one of my goals with Learning Liberated is that we encourage ourselves to take the time to consider, to think more about how we're going to fix it.
Right.
That we don't have to go with the knee-jerk reaction to fixing things.
Right.
And sometimes that's good, right? You want to resolve things as quickly as you can. But sometimes the immediate answer is not always the best solution to a failure.
Right. And I tend to agree that with both you and Covey in that the importance of owning our successes and failures, the courage is to be proactive and realize, hey, I made a mistake or I failed on this.
Yes.
And that's okay
Yes.
to say, hey, I failed on this. And I think that's what Covey's saying is immediately recognize it.
Yeah.
You may not have the correct method to correct it right away.
Yes.
But if you recognize it and you say, okay, I need to make a change, that gets you on the path to start making a change.
Yeah.
There's a song I love by Ben Rector,
Yeah.
30,000 Feet. And it's this conversation between these two people on an airplane. And the question is asked, how are you doing? And as part of the stanza, one of the lines is, I ran into harder times and came out the other side.
Yeah.
So I'm not quoting it correctly. Those, if you listen to it, you know what I'm talking about. But that's the idea: is we realize our failures and we get through them the same way that we recognize our successes. We've been talking about recognizing our failures and correcting them, but the principle for Learning Liberated is owning our successes and failures.
Right.
And so when we have a success, it's okay to say, "Hey, I did good on that."
Yeah.
What and how did I do good? What did try to learn from what steps you did to be successful, so you can repeat those steps
Right.
on your next learning claim.
Right. And one way or another, and it's not that you have to use all of this self-discipline to force your way through it.
Right.
But to own it and take that time to really gain inspiration from it.
Right.
And then make those changes from there. So cool. All right. Lastly, in the chapter about habit 2, begin with the end in mind, there's a section entitled A Principle Center that has some great information about principles. Principles are in use in Learning Liberated's fourth primary lens, stretching upward, inward, and outward. Another way to describe how we define our stretching is by seeking principles that govern the learning we seek. Principles decrease the need for self-discipline in order to avoid failure or to maintain successes. Covey adds to this understanding of principles with his discussion of them in this section of his book. I'll just touch on some of my favorite points about them. He says, principles are deep fundamental truths, classic truths, generic, common denominators. Principles don't react to anything. They don't get mad and treat us differently. We can be secure in the knowledge that principles are bigger than people or circumstances. The wisdom and guidance that accompany principles-centered living come from correct maps from the way things really are, have been, and will be. Correct maps enable us to clearly see where we want to go and how to get there. We can make our decisions using the correct data that will make their implementation possible and meaningful. So how do principles help us stretch our learning?
Well, I look at it, as we read those thoughts by Covey, the thing that comes to my mind is 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
There are some things in life that just are. And when we try to say, well, not 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, maybe 2 + 3 minus that. No, some things are set, they're immutable. And I think if we accept that, in whatever our learning claim is, that whatever you're trying to learn, there are some things that you can't change because you want them to.
Yeah.
When you're like me trying to learn the guitar.
Yeah.
Some things about a guitar is the strings that I have are steel. My fingers are going to hurt. And I got to build up calluses over time so that they don't hurt and I can play the guitar. I can't wish myself away from that. I can't, I can find, things go over my fingers that might keep it from hurting, but that I just have to accept that.
Yeah, in the end, you just have to put in the work to do
it.
Right.
You just have to put in the work to do it. And so if we understand that with whatever claim that we're learning, whatever learning claim we're searching after, that there are, and if we can find what those principles are, that'll help us guide our path to achieving that goal.
Right.
So we're not wasting time trying to meander around and there's a straight path to it.
Right.
Maybe meander a little bit, but as long as we get on the right path, I think that's, in my mind, that's what he's talking about the following those principles.
Yeah, I love that he takes the emotion out of things.
Right.
The third primary lens that we just talked about was owning your failures and successes.
Right.
And that's full of emotion.
Exactly.
Right? From both ends, this, kind of
yes.
bipolar kind of sense of exhilaration, but also depression almost, right? But the principles takes emotions out of things.
Right.
And I love that he brings that out in this, and that by using them, we make that change that we want possible.
Right.
So just owning a failures and successes is not going to make change possible. Right. But it's having those correct principles.
Right.
And that's what moves us beyond those failures and successes, those strong emotions. We can take a step back and we can be proactive and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do next.
Right.
So that's what I love about what he's saying there.
Okay,
hopefully this explanation of how Covey helps us understand learning liberated principles is helpful for you. If you have suggestions of topics related to learning liberated principles that you'd like to discuss, we'd love to hear them. So share them in an email or a chat on the Facebook. And next time we'll discuss another book, and we haven't decided for sure which book. So tune in. We'll find another. I have a whole bookshelf of books I'm excited to talk about in relation to learning liberated principles.
Exactly.
And in the meantime, send any questions or comments to learningliberated@gmail.com or share with us in our Learning Liberated Facebook group. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else.
Thanks a lot. Bye.